been about a week since I last did a video where we're working with uh, Atlas, MongoDB, and Realm. What we're going to do in this video, so if you remember in the last video, we had set up the database, we had the profile, and we were able to kind of create users and then log in and log out with the users. What I've done now is I've kind of modified this application a little bit, and I've added a map to it. And what we're going to do is we're going to show how to do location-based queries. We're going to do a nearby query, which is what you have right now when the app starts up. It does a nearby query to find superchargers, because I have a Tesla, and so I just figured, hey, let's plot some superchargers within 5 miles of my current location. My current location is Washington, D.C. And then we're not going to get to filtering in this video, but we are going to get to find region. So as I said, when the app starts up right now, it just finds everything within 10 miles. But if I do the find region, so let's kind of zoom my map in a bit. Zoom it out, right? And then now if you say, hey, find everything in this region, it comes back and it finds a couple of more locations. And then if I switch, because I know, basically what I did is I plotted the superchargers that I've been to. And let's see, I went out to Ocean City down here in Maryland. So let's see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. And there's now, if I search here, find the region, you'll see here's the supercharger that I went to down in Ocean City. And if I zoom all the way out, so if you notice now the ones in Washington didn't show before, but now this should show everything. So now it shows everything on the map. I think there's one more off to the side here. So let's try finding region again. Oh, I guess that's all of them. But the idea here is to show you how we're using Google Map, to track the region that we're in, and the region's what's visible. And then we're able to pass these coordinates of this kind of square here on the map. And then using the Mongo database with Atlas here, find the superchargers that I've added to the database, because I've created the coordinates with the lat long. Sorry, I created the coordinates with the lat long, and so we're able to kind of find these. And so that's what we're going to cover in this video. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Share this with your friends. If there's other interesting things you'd like to see, please make sure you let me know. Now let's kind of get to the database setup and how I got everything into the database. How did we get the data in? So let's go back to the top. So we are inside our Cloud Mongo. This is my project. And then inside my project, I'm able to, if you browse collections, when you're here inside of collections, well, let's see, let's go back up. So, nope. So this is where you can see my new collection. Here's my collection called Superchargers. The way I got that collection is you can go here and you say create collection, you give it a name. And so that's what I did. And then the way you add the objects is pretty straightforward. So let's see, you go to insert document, and then you literally can just start adding and entering the fields here. So I can just say, this one's called name, and then enter value. And so that's how I went through the process of adding all of my locations. One of the things that's different here is you notice I have a location type here, type point, which has my coordinates, which is my longitude and latitude that I store for each one of the locations. And so I went through and, like I said, I added a series of these. Another thing that you needed to do, because for these geo queries, you need to add an index. So if you go over here to indexes, you can see I have my index created based off of my location field, and you do that by selecting create index, and then you just enter the field that you want to enter, that you wanted it on, and then the type. And so I entered the field location and the type 2D sphere. You can get more information here by clicking on create index, and it kind of gives you the documentation. So that's how I've set up my geospatial index. And then here's all of the superchargers that are in here. And then the last thing that you need to do is you need to provide access to the data. And let's see if I can, where did I do that? Not here. So you go back to Realm. Yes, that's what you do. And so here inside of Realm, this is your application. You go to your specific application, and then you have your data underneath data access rules. And remember when we created the profile, we basically said only the owner, basically we gave the owner full access to everything. And then here, what we did for the superchargers, we set it up so that everyone has read access to it, period. No one can write it. There's the only way data gets in is I add it. Maybe if I go a little further, I'll show the ability to add comments to specific locations, then we'll show how that works. But this is how you kind of set up the rules. Also, if you notice, let's see, you can actually edit these and add additional rules. We're not going to do that here. Actually, let me take that out. And there's additional documentation up here on how to set it up. But the important part here is that you need to provide access to, you need to set up the data access rules, or else it'll start to throw errors when you query. So that's what we did to set up the data. And then let's go back to Atlas here. And then we can browse our collections. And then the last part here is you can kind of play around with this here using the filters up here. So for example, I can say, show me all of my objects that are in the state of Maryland. And then you can apply the query, and then it kind of returns the results for everything that's in Maryland. We can do, let's say Maryland with 8 stalls. And so I think I can do stalls. Hold on. Oh, I missed my quote here. Gotta do like the stalls. Actually, it's a number, so it's just 8 like that. So apply, and then there's only one of them that actually is in Maryland and has 8 stalls. And so this is pretty cool how you can kind of test out some of your queries here inside of the tool. And so this is what I wanted to cover about the tools, about setting up my data in the tool. And now let's start to see how we actually query this data from inside the application. Okay, so we are back to our original app. And we're going to work from here to build out the additional functionality. So this password is password. Oh, I need to put the appropriate application ID in. Hold on a second. So you can see we have this is what our current home page is, and we need to replace this with a map because that's what we want to do, the map to be the center of everything. So let's go to our home view. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to comment all this code out. So we're not going to use it. And then we're going to place a map component right here. Gmap is going to be the name of the component. And the reason why I know it's the name of the component is I have a separate video on integrating a Google map inside of VueJS. And what I'm doing is I'm using that map component as the start off point for this application. So I encourage you, I'll include a link below to that video. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about how I got the map to work because I have a whole separate video on it. I'm just going to incorporate the Google Map view. I'm just going to incorporate the Google Map implementation in Vue.js here for you inside of this Gmap component right here. So first, let's drop down here and let's import it. So called Gmap, going to be imported, and then it also is going to be a component that we need access to. So let's put it down there. Now the other thing we need to do is, well, let's create the file. And so we're going to put inside a component a new file. It's called gmap.view. And like I said, this component comes from a previous video that I'm going to share below. So I'm just going to cut and paste the code in, and then we'll discuss the code. Okay, so we have the code in, and let's set it up first to get it to render, and then we'll walk through and kind of explain what's happening. So first of all, it does not belong here. It needs its own import statement. So let's go down here. Let's get this out of there. Let's go down here and let's say import gmap from components.gmap. Okay. And well, it can't find a asset that we're using for the charge icon. So for now, let's just load that in now to save us some time so we don't have to run into that error later. So it's looking for a specific asset. Okay, we put that asset in. Let's go back, see if we can reload this right after we start. Okay, so I found the asset, but we don't have a map yet. It's because we haven't actually put it in the page. So let's go into our page here. So Gmap requires a couple of parameters. So we're going to disable the normal UI. We're going to zoom to 12. Our map type is roadmap. I'm in Washington, D.C., so I'm setting this is the lat long for the center of Washington, D.C. We're going to pass the markers that need to get rendered in. This is how you pass them in. So let's just comment this out right now because we're not going to pass in any markers at this point. And then, actually, let's just do this. Yeah, and we're not going to handle markers and region change quite yet. We're going to work up to that. So let's comment those. Let's just take those two out if we can. We'll just delete them and put them back in later. see if we can, right now we just want to get our map rendered on our page. Okay, so to get my map rendering, it's not rendering. I think it's because I need to set my style on this div. So let's move this up. Let's get rid of this div. Let's go. Okay, now we have our map on the full screen, which is what we're shooting for. Let's get rid of this padding because we want it to take over the whole screen. All right, so now we have our map showing on our page and everything's groovy. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get some items to show up on the map here. And as I said, our first query just pulls in the locations that are within 5 miles of my current location. I've centered my current location here at DC. This is DC. So hold on, let me put a comment up here. Centered map at DC. In the next version, we'll add, when we try to put this on a mobile device, we'll add capacitor, we'll get your current location, so we'll center the map based on your current location. We emptied out the markers because at this point we don't want to do markers. And then the other parameter that we're missing is this on region change, and we'll handle that later. Right now, I just want to make some progress, get something on this map. So what we want to do here is, let's see, on mounted right now, we're getting the current user, but also down here, we want to get chargers based on location. Okay, and so to do that, luckily there is a Mongo query that allows you to query based on a location, and that's what we're going to use. But we are going to stick with keeping all of our realm-specific stuff inside of this realm state file here. So let's go down to the bottom here. And we're going to add a new function down here. And let's see, do I have let's go back to my atlas. And one of the things that we can do here is, let's go to docs. Here we go, under geospatial queries. And what we're going to do is, let's see. So we set up our 2D sphere index in the first section. And then what this allows you to do, now that we have our index, we can query using this. Oh, no, that's an aggregation, so we're not going to do that. So scroll down. So we can do a near query. So we already inserted our places, and we've already done the index. What we want to do is a near query. And our collection is superchargers, and we're going to do a find based on location, near, then we're going to pass in a geometry of a point. And we're going to pass in a default point of Washington, D.C. And then we have the minimum distance and then a maximum distance. And remember that this is in meters. And so we're going to convert our miles to meters to get the right value that we want. And so it's a find based on the collection, and this is the format of it. And I've already written up the query, so I'm just going to drop it in, but I just wanted to explain it to you. So first, let's copy this doc from where we got it. And then let's go back to our code. Put a little comment here. As we got our code, and now let's drop in the query and we'll kind of step. Okay, so here's our function that we've added called get charges near location. It's an asynchronous function. We're passing in the coordinates because that's the location I want to search near. If no values are passed in, then I'm setting my default coordinates to these are the coordinates of Washington, D.C. You can get the distance, and I'm going to set the actually, let's just set the default to 5. So if you don't pass in a distance, it's going to default to 5. And then just like we did on the other queries, we're getting MongoDB using this MongoDB.atlas. Then we get our database, our VueDB1, and then the collection of superchargers, and there's our collection. And then we're following the query pattern that I just showed you in the Mongo documentation that is linked here above for geospatial queries. And we're going to do a near with the geometry of a point. The point are the coordinates that are passed in up above here. The minimum distance is 0 meters, and then the maximum distance, this is equal to 1 mile. This is 1 mile in meters. And so what's happening is the number I pass in, so if I pass in 5 and I multiply it by a mile in meters, then I get 5 miles. And so that's what we're doing here. And then we're just returning the results of this query. And then the last thing I need to do is I need to actually return this query so I can access it. So get charges near location. And so now we've added it to this realm state, so then we can go back to our home function. And then here inside of our onMounted, first of all, let's get the function, because right now we're just using user and log out. We need to do the get charges near locations. Now we have access to that function, and then we're going to call it here because this is asynchronous. And so we can say get charges near location, and then the location of the coordinates. And it's optional. And if I don't pass in anything, it will use the values that are specified, which is Washington, D.C., and the same thing with distance. So I'm not going to pass in anything. For distance, we'll use the default also. And so that will execute our query, and then I'm going to say await. And then we need to assign this to something. And remember when we first set this up, we had our markers assigned to locations. So let's put locations back in. And then we need to come down here into our code, and let's return a location. So const locations equals another ref. And then we're going to set this initially to empty. And then we're going to set locations to the value we get back. Okay. Oh, so sorry, locations.value because it's a ref. And then what we'll do down here is we'll return locations. So the locations can get passed through. And now you can see we're only getting one entry to show up, so I guess 5 miles isn't enough. Actually, let's just pass in the parameters because we know what they are. So we know this is the coordinates for Washington, D.C. Actually, let's just copy them directly from here. Let's do this. We're going to just take this out. There'll be no default setting for that. And let's go back to our home, and there's our query. So we're going to say that's the location, and we're going to say 10 miles. So now if we go back and we look at our map, we're getting 3 locations that are within 10 miles rendering on our map, which is what we're looking for. So you can see now how that is working. So the app starts up and it just executes this query and it gets us these 3 locations. All right, but the more interesting thing that we want to do is the region query. And the way the region query works is very simple. Let's go back to the documentation for a minute. So here we just did our near query, but what we're doing now is we want to do a polygon-based query. So let's scroll down a little bit more. So what we're going to do is this geo within, and you can pass it a polygon. So let's click on geo within here, and we'll see how it works. It says selects documents with geospatial data that exists entirely within the specified field. And the field is a polygon that we're going to pass in. And the polygon, so if you look down here, this is basically what we're doing. Geo within, geometry, polygon, and then we pass in the coordinates of the polygon. And for us, the coordinates of the polygon is the region of the visible map. So let's go back to our application. And so for us, the polygon that we're going to pass in is this is northeast, northwest, southwest, southeast, and then we have to pass in northeast again. And those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points will make up the polygon that we're going to pass in as coordinates. And then we tell the query basically find anything inside this polygon. And so how do we get the polygon? We get the polygon from the map. And what can happen is as you move the map around, or as the map is drawn, Google Map provides us a callback to let us know the region has changed. And when the region changed, I can get the bounds. The bounds that I get from Google Map will provide northeast, and it will provide southwest. And from those two coordinates, I can then extrapolate northwest and southeast. And then that will give me the 4 coordinates that I need to make the polygon. So let's see how we do this with Google Maps. Okay, so let's look at what we have inside of my Google Map. So if you notice in Google Map, I have this callback for on region change. And let's look what happens with on region change. So when I initialize my map, inside of this init map call, first thing I do is I create my map and I store it in a local ref in my component. The next thing I do is I create the info windows. The info windows, actually I didn't show you. These are the info windows. They pop up and give you all the associated information about the item on the map. Once again, more map details in the other video. And then this is new, this bounds changed. And what this does is anytime I kind of scroll the map around, the bounds are changing on the map. And when that happens, I want to call this callback called handle bounds change. And if we go to handle bounds change and see what that does is when I get called in this callback, I tell the map to get me the current bounds of the map. And from the bounds, I can get the northeast value and I can get the southwest value. And then I need to I need to derive northwest from that. And so what I do is I take the northeast lat and the southwest longitude, and that gives me my northwest. And then for southeast, I take the southwest lat and the northeast longitude, and that gives me southeast. So now I have the bounds. And those are the values that I need for the query. And then the last thing that I do is if there's a callback, so if this on region change callback up here is specified, then I call the handler and I pass it those coordinates northeast, northwest, southwest, southeast, because that's what I need to create my polygon. So if I go back to my home component right now and I scroll down, I need to, because right now I'm not handling the callback. So let's add that callback on region change, and then when on region change is called, we want to call another function. And the function that we want to call, let's create that function first. We're going to go down here. This looks like a good place to create it, and we're going to call it region changed. And when the region changed, we want to save the value in map region, and so we'll create another ref, and that's where we're going to save what the values we get whenever the region changes. So let's assign this function here, and then we also need to make sure we return region changed from our setup. So let's add that down here, and okay. So now I believe I'm logging my values in region changed. So let's go back to my map. And you can see here, as I'm changing the map, I'm logging the region. So let's take a look at that. So let's move this. Let's give us a little more room here. And you can see, so as I scroll my map around, my region is changing and I'm getting the bounds, here are the coordinates that I need, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 coordinates that I need. And even when I zoom in, you can see my regions are changing also, right? And these are the values that we want to pass to our function. But we want to prompt the user to do that query. So to prompt the user, we need a button. So let's kind of lay a button on top of the screen here. in our UI. So let's go back down. Let's go to our home, and underneath our map here, Gmap. Let's see, we can add a button. Let's put it in a div because we're going to have to style it a little bit. See, we don't want it kind of floating down there. We kind of want it on top. So we're going to say style, position absolute bottom 40. Let's see what we get now. Okay, so now we get our button kind of floating on top of our map, which is what we want. And let's kind of move it to the other side. And is that a little better? Yeah, that's a little better. So now we got our button. It's kind of floating on the other side over there. When you click this button, we want to do our search, right? And so let's do a click. And on the click, we want to do a region. We want to do a search based on the region. And so we're going to create a function called find in region. And then this function, let's make sure we pass it back. Find in region. And then right underneath here. And then here, find locations using current map region. And we're going to get the current map region from this map region value, and then we need to add another function to our realm state. And just like last time, I've already written up this function, so I'll just drop the function and explain it. So this function is based on the function that we discussed earlier in the documentation. And let's kind of walk through it so you can see how it all comes together. And get chargers in region. We need to return this. Okay, let's kind of walk through it. So just as before, we get the Mongo database, we get the collection, and then we use this collection find. And we, like I said, we're using this geo within query. We're passing the geometry, and the geometry are the coordinates. And the coordinates are what's getting passed in his region, and they're the lat long. And so what I've done is I start at the northeast, then I go over to northwest, then I go to southwest, then I go to southeast, and then I go back up to northeast. And so it creates a polygon, which is the area that is visible on the map, and that's what we pass in as the coordinates, and we're looking for any items within that geometry. And so this is the function. So now we're going to call this function from inside home. So let's go back to home, and let's add it here. Geo get chargers in region. So we can come down here and let's do this. We're going to do the same thing as before. We're going to say locations dot value equals weight get charges in region, and then we're going to pass in this map region value. And let's make this async. Okay, let's see if we got it to work on the first time around. Actually, let's kind of zoom our map in and do a query. And we found the other items in the region. And we can tell that it's working because what we can do is let's just zoom in to this one region here, right? So we'll just zoom over to here. All right, so you can see all of these items are showing it. Let's zoom over here, and let's do a find in region. And then if we zoom back out again, you can see that it only found the items that were in the region. And then if I do a find in region again, you can see it brings all the other items in. And we get all the appropriate information associated with them. So we're probably going to wrap it here. What I did not include is I haven't styled my buttons. I didn't add an additional filter button because we're going to, in the next video, we'll show how to filter on stalls, kilowatt hours, and also maybe the state. We've lost our log out ability, so we'll add another button for log out. And that'll probably be it to kind of wrap. Oh, and then the last thing that we'll do is we'll deploy it to a phone. Hopefully you found this video helpful. There was a lot of stuff going on here. Like I said, I encourage you to watch the Google Map video that I have. I'll include the link below because pretty much everything that's inside this map component is included in the other video. I cover kind of what's going on here with how you initialize the map. I cover how you're kind of adding the script to the index here and on mounted, the way that the info windows are displayed, the way you hide markers, the way you load the map markers. The only thing that's different here is that I've kind of used some HTML in my markers, but it's the basic information is also included inside of the documentation. The other interesting thing we're doing here is we're watching the props, the markers, so that's how, as I change the markers, my map is automatically rendered. But like I said, I'm going to wrap it up here now. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.